Welcome back to the deep dive. We need to talk about a very specific and I think very uncomfortable moment in life. It's not the crisis and it's not the victory. It's that weird gray limbo right after you make a big change.
The now what phase.
Yeah, exactly. The now what phase. You
Yeah.
quit the job that was, killing you, or you finally end that relationship that wasn't going anywhere. You drop this heavy weight you've been carrying. You feel that initial rush of relief, and then
And then nothing happens.
nothing.
And that nothing can be, I think, more terrifying than the actual crisis you just left.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah.
I think most of us, especially if you're a bit type A, you have this script in your head. It's like, okay, I did the brave thing. I let go. Now the universe is supposed to hand me the reward.
Right. And when the reward doesn't show up in like 5 minutes, we start to panic.
We spiral.
Well,
And that is the exact psychological reflex we are digging into today. We're looking at a piece from the collection, The Wisdom of the Waiting Silence. Specifically, it's episode 11, and it focuses on a woman named Anvika.
the subtitle of this one is When She Did Not Rush to Fill the Silence.
And I have to be honest, when I first read that, I felt a little called out. Because rushing to fill the silence is basically my default operating system.
Well, you're not alone in that.
If there's a gap,
Mm.
I am cramming a podcast or a project or just a good old-fashioned panic attack into it.
Right. We live in an economy of noise. I mean, silence in the modern world, it's treated like dead air on the radio. It's a mistake, something to be fixed. But this source material, it argues the complete opposite. It says this empty space, this void where something used to be is actually a piece of machinery. It's doing something.
But it doesn't feel like it's doing something. It feels like you're just rotting. So I really want to unpack this story because Anvika, she goes through this exact transition. She lets go, she hits the void, she freaks out a little bit, but then she stays.
She stays. That's the key.
So let's start at the beginning of the text. It opens right at that moment of release. It says, after releasing what no longer belonged to her, Anvika expected something to take its place.
That first part is important, what no longer belonged to her. But yeah, focus on the second half, the expectation.
And she had a whole shopping list of expectations. The text says she was looking for a direction, a sign, a sense of certainty. Basically, she wanted the roadmap for the next chapter of her life to just fall out of the sky immediately.
This is the transactional view of personal growth. We see letting go as a purchase. I pay with my sacrifice, so I receive clarity in return. I put down the burden of the bad job, so I am owed the epiphany of the dream career.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't it just survival instinct to look for the parachute? It feels dangerous to let go without knowing where you're going to land.
It is dangerous, or at least it feels dangerous to the ego. But the problem isn't the desire for safety, it's the timeline. We demand the safety simultaneously with the leap.
Right. We want the guarantee before we even hit the ground.
Exactly. So Anvika's standing there, hands open, waiting for the thunderclap. She wants the burning bush to show up and tell her she did the right thing.
Because if you don't get that sign, you start thinking you made a huge mistake. You think, oh no, I shouldn't have quit. At least before I was miserable but paid. Now I'm just lost.
Precisely. We interpret the silence as punishment, or worse, as evidence of failure. But here's the reality check the text just hits us with. She's waiting for the sign
So
and
nothing arrived.
Just brutal.
It gets worse, actually. The text describes this absolute zero state. It says there was no inner noise pushing her forward, no urgency demanding the next step. Now, on the surface, that sounds peaceful. No urgency sounds like a spa day. But when you're in it, that sounds like death.
Let's look at that term, inner noise. The text implies that this noise, the urgency, the push, that was her constant companion. That was her engine.
Oh, I know that engine. That's the anxiety that wakes you up at 3 a.m. saying you're behind. But here's the thing. That engine gets results. That inner noise is what makes me answer emails and hit deadlines. If you take that away, what motivates you to get off the couch?
And that is the million-dollar question for so many of us. We are addicted to what you could call dirty fuel. We run on cortisol, we run on the fear of irrelevance. So when Anvika releases the thing that didn't belong to her, she also, maybe inadvertently, cut the fuel line to that anxiety engine. The noise just stopped.
And without the noise, she felt.
The text says she felt a quiet space where something used to be.
Oof, that is such a haunting description. A quiet space where something used to be.
It's like the phantom limb sensation, even if the thing you let go of was toxic. A bad boss, a draining obligation, it occupied volume in your life, in your brain. It took up bandwidth. So when it's gone, you don't feel free immediately. You feel the whole.
And the text says, at first, the silence felt unfamiliar.
Unfamiliar is a very polite way of saying wrong. When your baseline is stress, peace feels like boredom, or it feels like apathy.
And I think that's where most of us bail. We hit that unfamiliar silence, we panic, and we immediately fill it with something else. We doom scroll, we say yes to a project we don't want just to get the noise back.
Yeah.
Because at least the noise is familiar.
Right. We prefer the devil we know, the anxiety, to the devil we don't, which is the void. But this is where Anvika breaks the pattern. She doesn't rush to fill it. She sits in the discomfort. And the text says something shifts. The silence went from feeling unfamiliar to feeling deliberate.
Deliberate. That's the word that really stopped me. How does sitting there doing nothing become deliberate? It sounds like you're just reframing laziness as strategy.
But it's not laziness. Laziness is avoidance. You're hiding from the work. Deliberate silence is confrontation. You're sitting with the reality of your life without trying to distract yourself from it. It's an active state. Think of it like a musician holding a rest in the music. They aren't not playing. They're playing the silence.
Okay, I can see that conceptually.
Yeah.
But what does that look like, practically? The text says she had two big realizations here. First, she understood that not every pause is empty.
This really challenges our definition of empty. We think empty means devoid of value.
Yeah.
But in this context, the pause is actually full of information. It's just not loud information.
And the second realization, and not every quiet moment is asking to be filled.
And that is the really countercultural piece. We are conditioned to treat silence like a vacuum that has to be filled. If there's a lull in conversation, talk. If there's a gap in the schedule, book it. Anvika realizes the silence isn't a question asking for an answer. It's a statement.
So the silence is allowed to just exist. It doesn't need a job.
Exactly. It doesn't need to be monetized or optimized.
This brings us to the core of this whole deep dive. The text breaks this down into 3 lessons to be learned. I want to push back on these a little because they sound so wise on paper, but living them out is, well, a nightmare.
Let's go through them.
Lesson 1. Silence can be a phase, not a void.
The distinction there is all about perspective. A void is infinite. It's a black hole you fall into forever. A phase is temporal. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
The text uses a winter metaphor here, doesn't it?
Yes. It compares the silence to winter. Above ground, everything looks dead. The branches are bare. It looks like a void. But underground, the root systems are incredibly active. They're strengthening, storing sugars, preparing for the spring push.
Okay, but here's my issue with the winter metaphor. Winter can kill you. If you aren't prepared for it, you can freeze to death. In a career sense, if I stay in winter for too long, I lose my network. I lose momentum. How do you tell the difference between a necessary winter phase and just fading into irrelevance?
That's the fear talking. And it's a valid fear, I get it. But the difference is intention. Are you in winter because you're hiding? Or are you in winter because you're regenerating? I mean, the text argues that continuous summer, constant blooming, constant production is biologically impossible. If a tree tried to bloom all year round, it would die of exhaustion.
So the void is actually a survival mechanism.
It's an incubation period. You can't skip incubation and expect a healthy birth, but yeah, it feels like nothing is happening. That's the illusion.
Which leads right into the most frustrating lesson, number 2. Clarity does not always arrive immediately.
The patience problem.
It's not just patience, though. It's the agony of the unknown. We treat clarity like it's an Amazon package. I ordered it. Where is it? The text seems to suggest we can't force the delivery.
Think about a glass of water that's filled with mud. If you want the water to be clear, what do?
Wait for the mud to settle.
Right. But what do we usually do when we want clarity? We stick our hand in the glass and try to scoop the mud out. We stir it all up. We frantically search for the answer. What should I do? What's my passion? What's the plan? All that churning just keeps the water muddy.
So the very act of trying to find the answer is what's hiding the answer.
Often, yes. The waiting is the actual technique for clearing the water. It's not passive. It's the only way the physics works. But that requires you to sit there looking at muddy water, feeling stupid, feeling unproductive, and just trusting that gravity is doing its job.
And that feeling of, I'm just sitting here looking at mud, is what drives people like us crazy. We want to filter the water. We want to hack the process.
And you can't hack organic growth. That is the hard truth.
Let's move to lesson 3, because this one actually gives me a little bit of hope. Stillness often prepares us before movement.
This is the why. Why do we have to endure this winter? because what comes next is going to be heavy. It's going to require something of us.
The text suggests we are gathering energy.
Think about an arrow on a bowstring. Before the arrow can fly, there's a moment where you pull it back. You stop moving forward. You hold it in tension. To an outside observer, you are just standing still. But that stillness is loaded with potential energy.
So the silence isn't the absence of energy. It's the accumulation of energy.
Correct. If you just sort of threw the arrow without pulling back, without that pause, it wouldn't go anywhere. You need the draw phase.
I like that, but I do worry about the difference between that tension and just going slack. How do you know if you're pulling back the arrow or just dropping the bow?
I think you feel it in the quality of the silence. Remember how the text shifted from unfamiliar to deliberate? Dropping the bow feels like giving up. It feels heavy, depressed. Pulling back the arrow, that deliberate silence, it feels alert. You're watching, you're waiting, you're ready, but you aren't forcing it.
You're attentive?
Yes. You aren't checking out a life, you're checking in, you just aren't acting yet.
So Anvika applies these lessons. She stops stirring the mud. She holds the tension. She survives the winter. And I think every listener right now wants to know, does she get the thing? Does the sign finally appear?
The resolution in the text is fascinating because it's so anti-Hollywood.
It says, as she stayed with the silence, Anvika began to sense something quietly taking shape within it.
Quietly taking shape.
It wasn't a thunderclap.
No. And this is why the inner noise had to stop. If she still had that engine of anxiety roaring in her ears, she never would have noticed something quietly taking shape.
It's like trying to hear a whisper in a rock concert. You have to kill the music to hear the message.
And notice the directionality. In the beginning, she wanted a sign from the outside, a direction, a map. But this thing took shape within the silence. It grew out of her.
That is a huge shift. She went from looking for an instruction manual to developing an intuition.
Pushed versus pulled. The inner noise pushed her. This new thing, this quiet shape is likely pulling her. It's an organic interest, a curiosity, a genuine desire, not a frantic need to escape.
But it's slow. That's the part that kills me. Taking shape sounds slow.
It is slow. Real things are slow. Trees grow slow. Children grow slow. Only cancer and explosions happen fast. If you want a life that is sustainable, it usually has to take shape over time.
Only cancer and explosions happen fast. Wow, okay, that puts my need for speed in perspective.
We are so afraid of being slow that we build lives that are fragile. Anvika is building something sturdy, but the cost is the weight.
So if we look at this whole arc, she let go. She hit the terrified void. She resisted the urge to fix it. She realized the silence was a workspace, not an empty space. And eventually, something real started to grow.
That's the summary. But the lived experience is messy. We make it sound very linear here, but I'm sure Anvika had days where she cried, days where she almost took the old job back, days where she felt like a complete failure. The text compresses time, but we have to acknowledge the struggle.
Absolutely. The deliberate phase probably involved a lot of doubting the deliberation.
But she didn't fold, and she didn't rush to fill it.
So bringing this back to the person listening right now, maybe they're in the mud. Maybe they're staring at a blank calendar or a blank ceiling, and that anxiety engine is just revving up, telling them they're wasting their life.
If that's you, the source material offers a very specific reassurance. Nothing has gone wrong.
That is so hard to believe.
It is. But the silence is not an error message. It's not a malfunction. It is the winter phase. It is the muddy water settling.
You don't have to fix it.
You don't have to fix it, and maybe more importantly, you can't fix it by rushing. You can only delay the clarity by rushing.
That's the kicker. The rushing actually makes the wait longer.
Exactly.
So we want to leave you with a thought to chew on. And this isn't a to-do list item. It's not something to add to the noise.
Based on Anvika's story, I want to ask a question to that part of you that is terrified of the quiet. If you stopped rushing to fill the silence in your life right now, if you put down the phone, stopped forcing the conversation, stopped manufacturing busy work, what might you catch quietly taking shape that the noise is currently drowning out?
What is waiting to be heard?
It might be a new idea. It might be a hard truth you've been avoiding. Or it might just be your own nervous system finally exhaling.
Whatever it is, it can't speak until you stop shouting.
Well said.
Thank you for diving deep with us. Good luck with the silence. It isn't easy, but it seems like it's necessary. We'll see you next time.